Let's go back almost 19 years in time to what the British National Party billed as almost the trial of the century. Well, it certainly was for Mark Collett and Nick Griffin, wasn't it? However, history very nearly didn't work out that way. It nearly worked out an entirely different way, in actual fact. So the background to it was one of the security team called Lee had finished with his girlfriend, and Mark Collett was winding him up, as he was wont to do at that time, in actual fact, because he was an extremely immature man and should never have been promoted to any position of seniority or authority in the BNP. Another one of Nick Griffin's notable failures, we might add. But that said, he was winding up Lee and saying basically, you know, well, now you've lost your girlfriend, I'm going to sleep with her, basically. I'm going to have her. And Lee couldn't take anymore. And so what happened was he jumped up in a fit of rage, clearly upset, and rightly so in actual fact, and clonked Collett. A good and proper blow. And Collett obviously went into a massive tantrum. You know, because the man is a grandiose narcissist, an egomaniac, and the whole world revolves around little Mark. He's the epicenter of his own universe, in actual fact. No one else exists. He still behaves like it today in the patriotic alternative, quite frankly. And so what happened was, he then said, well, I'm going to get Joe Owens, you know, the alleged notorious assassin from Liverpool. I'm going to get Joe Owens to shoot him. He says, he's punched me. I mean, this type of behaviour is just absolutely, it's scandalous. Truly it is. Highly destructive. This is not a way to run a political party, quite frankly. And you wonder why I left 4 years before. This is why. And so what happened was Warren Bennett, the renowned hardman, Scottish hardman, intervened, and he gave Collett basically a bare slap to calm him down, as you would a hysterical girl, quite frankly, and read him the riot act and told him to shut up, particularly about his threats towards Lee and his girlfriend, because of his girlfriend. You know, it was just absolutely crass, infantile behaviour. And, you know, Collett was a very senior leader in the BNP at this time. When I was a senior leader in the BNP, you know, in the early 1990s, never once did I behave in this immature manner. Just totally, utterly different people. And so Collett then demanded from Griffin that Lee be kicked out of the party. And Griffin was only too willing to do it, until the head of security stepped in, basically, and said, well, you know, if you kick Lee out of the party because of what's happened, and Collett got what he deserved, quite frankly, then the entire security team here in the Northwest goes with him. You know, we're not going to give you any form of protection whatsoever, because this is completely unacceptable. Mark Collett was in the wrong, and he got what he deserved, quite frankly, and shouldn't have done it. And he should be the one apologising to Lee. So Collett, true to form, basically said to Griffin, if you don't sack Lee, if you don't get rid of him and take the entire security team with him, I'm going to turn Queen's Counsel, Queen's evidence against you and testify against you at Leeds Crown Court. Yes, absolutely right. This is Collett, yes. I will testify against you at Leeds Crown Court for the Crown and ensure you're convicted and he's acquitted. And, it's not surprising at all, is it really, when you see all of these PA people going to prison and Collett just sits there, Mr. Teflon. Well, he's got form for it, hasn't he? And this is the background to it. And so what happened was, true to form, yeah, absolutely, Griffin, true to form. He kicked Lee out of the party. He'd made a number of absolutely catastrophic purges in 2010. Kicked out lots of the best people in the party who were driving the party towards its success and had been responsible for its success in the previous 2 years. You know, the 1 million vote. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, they got kicked out. The security team went with him. And, of course, Collett was satisfied by that. And he behaved himself at the trial because, obviously, it was won by Griffin, the much more senior, older, wiser figure. And the rest is history. But in truth, it very nearly didn't happen, you know, because Collett, in his egocentricity, you know, which is what you get with all of these narcissists, particularly the grandiose narcissists, that's always grandstanding and platforming and then playing the victim, you know, no matter what outrageous behaviour they inflict on other people. It very nearly didn't happen because Collett threatened to turn Queen's Counsel against him. I mean, my goodness, honestly. And these things have been concealed from the BNP membership for all of these years. They've been concealed from the public as well, in actual fact. And after a conversation I had last night with a very senior nationalist, who said, you know, as a result of me making the rise and fall of the British National Party, he said, well, why didn't you mention this incident? And I said, well, you know, the simple truth is, making a docu-series is not just a chronological list of events. That would come across as being quite boring. But, you know, I was convinced after speaking to him, quite frankly, that, you know, I should do a separate podcast about it. And that's why I'm doing this, because the trial in itself was very important, because what happened after their acquittal, which very nearly didn't happen, obviously, it nearly resulted in Griffin being convicted and Collett being acquitted, obviously, in a deal with the state. He was looking for immunity from prosecution, and I think he was looking for that in actual fact anyway, quite frankly, knowing Collett. Now, he's the most afraid leader, inverted commas, of any nationalist organisation we've ever encountered. You know, this man's not a leader. Wouldn't follow him around the Monopoly board, in actual fact, quite frankly. It's bound to lead to a prison cell, in all honesty, whilst he holds the get out of jail free card. Yeah, that's Collett for you. But the significance of the trial was that afterwards, Gordon Brown said the very next day that race relations laws would have to be reviewed because they'd been acquitted. And that's exactly what happened. And in the review, the subsequent review, the laws were tightened up so much that now no nationalist can go before any court under this foreign occupation government. There's no such thing as an independent judiciary. That's all nonsense. Forget that public relations drivel. And stand a chance of being acquitted. There is absolutely no chance of of a fair trial during due process. It's not a tribunal of fact, it's an inquisition of guilt, which has been established in advance. But Collett and Griffin were the very last two nationalists to get a fair trial in this country, but they very nearly didn't get one. They very nearly it ended up with Collett becoming, a witness for the Crown in actual fact. But obviously Griffin bowed down to him. But Griffin was always the snake in actual fact. And obviously having had to do that, he gave way. He gave Collett what he wanted. He secured his own liberty to carry on wrecking the British National Party in actual fact with Collett. And then kicked Collett out of the party as well. And the very first thing Collett did is he went to the media and said, well, look, Griffin, he'll accuse me of being this, he'll accuse me of being that. I'll be the MI5 agent. Griffin's favourite routine in actual fact with Simon Darby is clinically paranoid sidekick. And this is the point that I'm making, always playing the victim card. But Mark Collett, quite frankly, was an absolute disaster for the British National Party. He did absolutely nothing good for it whatsoever. And as for the young BNP, well, come on, honestly, that ended in wreckage as well, didn't it? The same as everything else Griffin touched. And the reason why is because they kicked out all the decent and best people in the party. I left. I would have been kicked out at some stage. Absolutely no doubt about that at all. And I knew it. I left before I got the boot, quite frankly. I would never give them the pleasure of that. But a whole dearth of people did get the boot. And these were the people who built the success of the British National Party. And this lesson from recent history is significant because it should teach nationalists today who are still in a state of almost semi-disarray, still recovering from the collapse of the British National Party, how a political party should not be run. The British National Party was run in the most appalling way, from the top down in actual fact. And it was never this bad under John Tyndall, with all of his faults, and the fact that he was stuck in his way and wouldn't advance strategically and tactically. Look, Tyndall never did anything of this nature. It's just absolutely shocking. And of course, Tyndall died during that trial, didn't he? He sacrificed his life, quite literally sacrificed his life. And I think that's the one thing that we should remember whilst Mr. Tyndall was anything but perfect, he paid the ultimate price because he died during that trial as a result of that trial, the stress and duress that he was put under, which is a part and parcel of the whole thing, isn't it? You know, the process is the punishment, they call it, you know. And the punishment for John Tyndall was death, quite simply. Whereas Collett and Griffin just went on to carry on wrecking. And, you know, the simple truth is Griffin must never be allowed to make a comeback in any political party. His Christian nationalism routine today is just a grift. Collett's on the grift as well, basically. And then, of course, is this other issue, and we'll finalise on this issue, you know, is the constant connection between Mark Collett, Paul Golding and Tommy Robinson. You know, Golding is the link man between the two. Collett and Robinson are supposed to be opposite ends of the spectrum. And if we go back to the pipe grease boy, Paul Thorpe, who once said that, you know, he referred to the likes of Collett and Patriotic Alternative as the real far right, whilst they were attending that very rally that day on the 26th of October 2024 in London. Well, in actual fact, behind the scenes, they'd already been given consent to attend that rally and unfurl a banner and make a video promoting Patriotic Alternative. And of course, part of the deal was the grift for Sam Melia. And we all know Laura Towler, my goodness, what a horrible, incurable liar that woman is, quite frankly. You know, the Mosley simping fanatic. And Collett, of course, is a Hitler simping fanatic. But is he really a Hitler simping fanatic? Is he not really a Collett simping fanatic in the mirror? Because that's the only person that exists in Mark Collett's world, is Mark Collett, whilst looking in the mirror. But we should look in the mirror at where we went wrong by working with people like this, by trusting them. I didn't trust them, and I didn't work with them, quite frankly. And I'm not trying to be holier than thou and a smart ass, quite frankly. I didn't trust them. I was gone because I saw what was coming, and I didn't want to be around to see the disaster unfold, you know, up close and personal. But we should learn from this, you know, that we must never go down this road again. And that's the purpose behind making this video, is that, you know, nationalists have got to move on. You've got to stop clinging to the British National Party and find something else, you know. And whilst it's very intriguing, you know, for me to make these podcasts, you know, about the recent past, ultimately what I'm trying to do is to reawaken your sense of nationalism, your sense of activism, you know, and to redirect you towards a different form of sensible nationalism, grassroots, moderate campaigning for remigration. And I urge you to do that. Please put this behind you.